All right, let's begin a quiet exploration together. We're going to be looking at a particular inner experience. One that can often feel a little out of step with the rest of the world. It's a way of perceiving things that's just deeper, more complex, and it has a name: the differentiated mind. So let me ask you this. Does the world sometimes just feel too loud, too shallow? You might have this sense that you're tuned to a completely different frequency, picking up on layers and depths that everyone else seems to just miss. Well, what if I told you that's not just a feeling? It can actually be the sign of a very distinct psychological structure. Okay, so the official term for this is differentiated consciousness. Now, this idea comes straight from the work of Carl Jung, and it describes a way of processing reality that's just way more complex and layered than what's considered the norm. And it's so important to get this right from the start. This is not a disorder, it's not a flaw, it's a recognized, though pretty uncommon psychological pattern. So, how does this pattern actually show up? Well, we're about to walk through 8 key signatures of this deeper consciousness. And I want you to think of these less like a checklist, to tick off, and more like different facets of one single whole way of experiencing the world. First up, we have emotional depth. And look, this isn't about being overly emotional. Not at all. It's about a kind of emotional sophistication. For someone with this pattern, a feeling is never just a simple reaction. It's more like a symphony, carrying these incredibly complex layers of meaning, of history, of insight. It's like tapping into these deep currents of experience that, frankly, most people have learned to push down or ignore. Okay, pattern number 2 is what we could call a sacred curiosity. While a lot of people are perfectly happy with the what of life, this type of consciousness is absolutely driven by the why. It's this deep refusal to just accept shallow answers. This is actually connected to what Jung called the transcendent function. You can think of it as the psychological engine of creativity itself. It's that ability to see beyond how things are right now and to start imagining how they could be. And all of that deep questioning, it naturally leads to pattern 3, conscious independence. But this isn't an independence you choose. It's one that becomes a psychological necessity. It's not about building a defensive wall against the world. No, it's the natural result of what Jung called individuation, that incredible journey of building a solid sense of self from the inside out, one that just isn't easily knocked around by what everyone else thinks. Now, for pattern 4, hyperperceptive awareness. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and you can just feel the unspoken tension? Like you can read the energy between people before anyone even says a word? That's what this is. And it's not just some woo-woo idea. Jung himself validated this, identifying intuition as a totally legitimate psychological function, a way of perceiving reality that goes way beyond our 5 obvious senses. And all this deep perception of the world outside, well, it's really a tool for understanding the world inside, which Jung captured so perfectly when he said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Think about that. Every little observation out there becomes a mirror, shining a light right back on our own inner workings. This constant drive for self-understanding, it fuels the 5th signature, an almost desperate craving for meaning. For this psychological type, being authentic isn't some trendy lifestyle choice. It is a fundamental, non-negotiable need. Trying to live an inauthentic life, pursuing shallow goals, it doesn't just feel wrong. As Jung pointed out, it can actually create real neurotic symptoms because the psyche itself is in open rebellion. And you know what happens when you're constantly driven by authenticity? It leads directly to pattern 6, a history of outgrowing things. You outgrow people, environments, old beliefs. And yeah, this can be incredibly painful, but it's a completely natural part of this mind's development. It's really a process of psychological death and rebirth. We're shedding those old layers of conditioning and relationships that no longer fit. Well, it's just an irreversible part of your growth. And all that inner work has this incredible effect on other people. That brings us to pattern 7, a transformational presence. Just by being their authentic selves and listening with that incredible depth, these individuals create what's known as a psychological holding space. It's a space where other people feel so deeply seen and heard that they feel safe enough for their own truths to come out, often without a single piece of advice being given. The presence itself is the catalyst for change. And finally, pattern 8. It's this persistent, often kind of vague sense of purpose. It's not about wanting to be famous or rich. It's more of a restless inner knowing that you have some kind of unique contribution to make to the world. Jung saw this as our creative potential just begging for its proper expression, this deep, deep need to align with our truest nature. But, and this is a really big but, these profound traits aren't all easy. They come with challenges. With this kind of depth comes a huge responsibility to understand its shadow side, all the potential pitfalls that can pop up if this pattern isn't handled with conscious awareness. You see, every single one of these gifts has a corresponding shadow. It's like two sides of the same coin. That transformational presence, it can so easily curdle into unconscious self-sacrifice. That deep perception, it can lead straight to crippling emotional exhaustion. And that conscious independence can slip right into a really painful, lonely isolation. The only way to navigate this duality, the only way, is with conscious awareness. Let's look at 3 of the most common traps people fall into. First, there's the superiority complex, where you start seeing your difference as being better than others. Then you've got the messianic shadow, this belief that it's your job to heal or wake up everybody around you, which is a fast track to burnout. And finally, the martyrdom shadow, this mistaken belief that to be deep, you also have to suffer and sacrifice your own happiness. Just recognizing these patterns, that is the crucial first step to disarming them. So, this all brings us to the journey itself, the path to wholeness. And the goal here is not to get rid of these traits or their shadows. That's impossible. Instead, it's about a lifelong process of integration, of learning how to weave all these parts into a coherent, authentic, and whole version of yourself. And this journey, it usually unfolds in a few stages. You often start out as the unconscious outsider, just feeling different and thinking it's a problem you need to fix. But then there's an awakening. You start to recognize these traits are actually valuable, and you begin the real shadow work. And that leads to the final stage, the individuated consciousness, where you're truly living authentically from your center with a sense of purpose and wholeness. And this really gets to the heart of it all. The goal isn't to eliminate the shadow, it's to make it conscious. It's not about achieving perfection, it's about achieving awareness. True wisdom, then, lies in knowing when to share your gifts with the world and when you need to pull back and preserve your own energy. It's a delicate, ongoing dance. So, I'd like to leave you with something to reflect on. Just ask yourself, how might you honor your own depth while also protecting your own energy? What would that look like in your life, right now? And here's one more thought to carry with you. What would change for you, really change, if you started to see your sensitivity not as a burden, but as a powerful and unique form of intelligence? I think Jung really said it best. Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. Ultimately, the journey's always inward. All that clarity and purpose we're looking for, it's not out there in the noise. It's waiting for us in the quiet depths of our own being. Thank you so much for joining me on this quiet exploration. If anything we talked about offered you even a small moment of recognition, maybe you'll consider subscribing to Quiet Patterns. We'll be taking many more journeys into these depths together.